Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On the topic, a holistic insight into data center technology. The speaker is Ms. Shivani Sagar from Schneider Electric, Canada. She did her bachelor's in 2016 with Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Navrachna University, Vadodara. She pursued her master's in Energy Systems from University of Toronto, Canada. During her master's, she has worked as management consultant at Bombardier Aerospace and Siemens Building Technologies. She is currently working as product enabling specialist at Schneider Electric, Canada. I welcome you, Shivani, to enlighten our audience about the topic. Shivani.
Thank you, Shweta ma'am, for the introduction. Now I'll share my screen. So
Yeah, we have it.
Okay. Just a minute. Okay, so before I begin, I would like to thank all of you who are here present and who have spared some time to listen to me. Thank you, Navrachna University, for giving me this opportunity to share what I have been doing on day-to-day basis nowadays. So before I begin, let me give introduction of myself in terms of what I have been doing at Schneider. So after finishing my master's in 2018, I started working as offer marketing specialist, where I was responsible to make digital sales tools for our sales teams. And I also launched the Lithium Ion service offer. So I was in the service department of the data center. So there are two things. There is a product and then there are services. So my first role was on the services side. And I also did some of the projects to increase customer satisfaction by interviewing some of our customers and doing some university events. After that, I went on to the channel sales role. So my duties were to train our resellers on our products, to help them size edge solutions for our customers, and then provide all the pricing support and also provide all that is required for the sales enablement. Currently, I'm the product enablement specialist. So my day-to-day job is to go through all the products that are going to launch in Canada. So I'm responsible for all the products under data center division for Canada. So I have to interact with the global product line managers to see what is there on the roadmap and what technology is coming out. And then I have to launch it in Canada by doing trainings for our sales teams, for our electrical contractors and our partners. I also manage some of the ETO offers. So ETO offers is like for NAM, the three-phase voltage is 480 volts. So in USA, the three-phase voltage is 480 volts, but in Canada, it is 600 volts. So the products that are generated, they are not focused on the Canada requirements, because Canada has low market share compared to US. So then we have to rely on the engineering team to size our products accordingly so we can sell it to our customers. So I manage some of those products, and I also create dashboards so our leadership team can have a visibility to what is happening with our business. So that's me. I have been in this data center industry for 2 years. I'm pretty new, so there might be a scenario that if you ask a question, I may get back to you later, but I will try my best to answer your questions and to share about the data center industry. So the agenda of the webinar is, first I'll talk about the industry 4.0, because before going to data center, it is very essential to know that why data centers are required and how crucial they are in our day-to-day lives. So first I'll talk about industry 4.0, then about the data center, some of the components of the data center. And so data center has two sides. There's a software side and the networking side with the servers and everything, and then there is the power side. So as you all are electrical engineering, as you're studying electrical engineering, I'll focus on the power side of the data center. So we will see the UPS topologies, UPS configurations, and the advancements. And then there is also cooling in data center. How does it work? Then the physical and environmental monitoring, and edge computing, and some of the career options for you. So um, revolution. So what is revolution? Revolution is if there is a major change for a society, for an organization, or at a global level, then it's called a revolution. So right now we are entering the fourth industrial revolution, but before that we already passed through the three industrial revolutions. So the first industrial revolution started in 1760. This was when the steam engine was invented, right? So before that, people used to make things with their hands, but with industry 1.0, they started using machines for that. Then came the industry 2.0. So this was the second industrial revolution, which started in late 1800s. This was when electric bulb was invented, telephone, internal combustion. So we got assembly lines. So now with the same amount of time, we can make more products as compared to the industry 4.0. Then came the industry 3.0, and this was in the second half of the 20th century. So this was when the invention of the semiconductor came, personal computers, internet. So when all these came, we entered into the third revolution, and that was the revolution of automation. Now we are entering industry 4.0. So industry 4.0 is, if you have heard about Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. So they are the base of industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is where all the things are connected. Now, if I want to give you an example of how does the industry 4.0 looks like, so say for example, we have a factory that makes chocolates. So chocolates of different flavors of fruits. So like orange, pineapple, and banana and other flavors. So there is a chocolate, there is a wrapper, and there is a box, right? So there are three things. Now it may happen that the chocolate may go with the wrong wrapper or the wrong box. Now with industry 4.0, there will be digital twin for all of these three things. So there will be physical that will be going on in the assembly line, and then there will be digital twin. So if anything is mismatched, the digital twin will recognize it immediately, and it will be corrected through the systems, because then there will be sensors, there will be robotic arms, and they will be communicating with each other. So we don't need humans like in the assembly lines in the production unit. So that's industry 4.0. It is like I cannot say that we have acquired this technology, because still industries are trying to think how they can enter into this revolution. Some of the applications of industry 4.0 is augmented reality. So augmented reality is virtual reality, and you can see that how this virtual reality is changing the gaming industry right now. Then big data, the amount of data that we are generating nowadays is like this has never been generated before. So we have to manage that data, and we have to see that how we can get insights from this data. Then comes the autonomous robots. If you go through any manufacturing videos for cars, say Toyota or Honda, you will see that mostly the manufacturing is done by the robotic arms. But with the industry 4.0, all the robotic arms will be communicating with each other. Then comes the additive manufacturing. Additive manufacturing is about 3D printing. So with the 3D printing, we will have lighter and stronger materials for aircrafts. We will have bionic arms and the other organs. Then comes the simulation. So simulation is testing a scenario or a product or a unit in a closed environment, right? So for example, the pilots, if they want to train themselves, if they want to test their driving and everything, so they can use simulators, and they don't have to actually fly an airplane. This used to be there before, but now the advanced version is coming. Then the system integration. System integration is where different softwares are talking to each other, right? So if in a building there is a building management system, and then say there is a data center, so there will be data center management system. So they both will be communicating with each other. Then cloud computing. So cloud computing is you can have access to data wherever you are through the cloud. And what is cloud? So say for example, we use Google Drives, right? So we store our files in that Google Drive and then we forget about it. Now that those drives, there is some hardware where this is stored, and that hardware is server. And where are those servers? They can be anywhere across the world. But once you're into the network, you can get access to it. So that's cloud computing. Then comes Internet of Things. Internet of Things is all the sensors who are connected and sharing data, and with that data we can make decision, and in our factories we can do preventative maintenance. And definitely cybersecurity. So you can see that most of the things are running on sensors and they are generating data. So the risk of security of is more than ever, and that's why like each and every industry is talking about cybersecurity, how to make sure that um, like hackers are not hacking our systems and our business is not affected. So that's all about industry 4.0. There was a new forecast from IDC estimate that there will be 41.6 billion connected IoT devices or things generating 79.4 zettabytes of data in 2025. So you can see that this industry is booming right now. Now, 50 trillion dB of data, 30 billion connected things, and 20 times increase in the spending on AI by 2020. And because of these things, we need data center. Because what is data center? Data center will have servers, right? So whenever the data is generated, we need servers to store our data, right? To process that data. And that's where data center comes in. Like in today's world, it is not possible to think that we can live without data center. Each and every one is dependent on this. So data center is a facility composed of networked computers, storage that businesses and other organizations use to organize, process, store, and disseminate large amounts of data. So there is also a nice video on YouTube. If you have time, you can look into it. So it's a video on Google Data Center, and it will show that these data centers, they are like huge facilities. It's not like a single room, right? We have seen server rooms in our university, but when we talk about data center, they are super huge because there are so many servers, and then we need UPSs to to protect those servers in terms whenever there is power failure. And then there is also cooling, so we will see that in upcoming slides. So just a minute. Okay, so power comes from the utility, and this is the automatic transfer switch. So from here, data center starts. So the automatic switch will transfer the power. If the utility power goes off, then it will transfer to the backup generator. And otherwise, power will flow through the utility. So it will go through the UPS. UPS will clean the power, and it will also save the equipment in terms whenever there is power failure. And then so other power will also go to the cooling equipment, because cooling is required in data center. Why? We will see in the further slides. Then from the UPS, it will go to the power distribution unit. Power distribution unit will, as the name says, it will distribute power through different equipments. And here the equipment, they are the rows of servers. This is the picture of a very small data center. So if you see, these are the rows of servers. This is the electrical room. So it will have UPS, battery systems, maintenance bypass, power distribution unit. So all these things will be here, and these will be the servers. And then many of these things you can see here, they are for environmental and physical monitoring. So for example, to check if the temperatures are high, and then to see that if there is any liquid, if there is any leakage, because there is cooling involved here, right? And there is water based cooling. So if there is any leakage that is happening, and then there is access control. So there are three types of things basically that the main component. So it's power side, then it's cooling, and then there is a software. So software will manage all these alerts that go into that can share data of what is happening with the data center. So about the UPS, this UPS here is 50 kilowatt UPS. Okay, so before coming here, let's go through this UPS diagram. Now here it's the dual supply, but there are two styles, like we can also use single supply, right? So in single supply, this will be connected through here and this will be connected to this breaker. So now here what happens? Normally power will flow through the static bypass, and here we will have load. Also power will flow through the rectifier and it will charge the batteries. Now, if something happens, or if says there is something wrong with the utility power, this static bypass will detect it. This is a switch, but it will also detect that if anything is wrong, then this breaker will be closed, and then here battery will start supplying the load. So static bypass and maintenance bypass, these are two kinds of switch. The difference is this is automatic. This will detect on its own and it will close or open automatically. While this maintenance bypass is not an automatic switch, it's a manual switch. So static bypass is used when if the power is if the utility power is off. Maintenance bypass is used when if we want to do maintenance on the UPS, say for example, if there is something wrong with the rectifier, or say there is something wrong with the inverter, so we cannot say that okay, let's close this whole system, and we cannot bring servers down, right? We are working on a computer, and say if power goes off, we may lose some files. Okay, it will create a headache for some minutes, and that's fine, we are not losing money. But for this big businesses, say for example, if Google data centers go off, right, they will incur huge amount of loss in like few seconds. So then we have maintenance bypass here. So if there is any maintenance that is required on the UPS unit, power will flow through this. Now, this is the 50 kilowatt UPS. So so here you can see that the UPS is there in the module forms, right? So this is the power module, this is the static bypass, this is the maintenance bypass. But before coming to the modularity, the UPSs were not in the modular form, and they were in the standalone. So there were no modules. What is the advantage of modules is, like this power module, if something is wrong with this, you can just remove it. You just have to remove this module. And so when I say you, it is field service technicians who do service and any maintenance or anything, any repair, any kind of repair. So they just have to you remove this module, and they can see that what is wrong with it and they can fix it. But before, that was not the case, right? So this helps in maintaining the UPS for a longer time. Here you see this thin strip. It is the intelligent module. It is the brain of the UPS. So all the alerts, or it will monitor whatever is going on with the UPS, and it will communicate through the software. We will also look into that in upcoming slides. This is the power module. This is the static bypass switch. So this one. This is the maintenance bypass. These are the battery modules. So this is a string. So one string has 4 modules. And this is the space if a customer wants to add more batteries. So with these amount of batteries, customer can get 5 to 10 minutes of runtime, and then they can switch on to generator. But if they want to add more runtime, they can add more batteries here. They can also add different battery, like they can add battery racks on the say right side or left side. So it will be a cabinet full of these battery cabinets. So they can also do that. Now, so there are different topologies of UPS, but these two are the main one. And the other topologies, they are versions of these topologies. So the double conversion UPS, how does this work? So normally, say if everything is going well, if the utility power is coming, it will go through rectifier, and it will go to inverter. So it will change from AC to DC. It will go to the batteries, charge batteries, and then this will also go from DC to AC, and then there will be load here. Static bypass which will not be used. But say if something goes wrong with these units, then power will flow through the static switch. If something goes wrong with the utility power, then power will flow through the battery. So this is how it works. Double conversion is power is converted here twice. So one through rectifier and the other through inverter. This is also called online UPS because like these two units, they are completely on. Now the eco mode. Eco mode is power will not flow through this path. Power will flow through the static bypass. And some of the power will also flow through the rectifier to charge the batteries. If something goes wrong with the utility power, then batteries will supply the load. So this is the difference here. Now, also the efficiency. So here as power is going through these converters, this is an inverter, and to get pure sinusoidal wave from inverter, it is not easy. So efficiency here is 94% to 97%. While here the efficiency is 98% to 99% because power is not coming through here. Mostly power is coming through the static bypass. But there is a trade-off. So power quality is good here. Why? Because power is being filtered while going through these converters. While here power is not being filtered. So any kind of transient surges, frequency deviations, it may pass through this and it may affect the load. So it depends where the data center is, right? Based on the location, also on how critical the equipment is, and also what kind of utility power is coming in that area. So based on that, a customer can do the decision. Also the energy savings. So you know that these electronic devices, when they work, they generate huge amount of heat. So we need cooling to cool these units, right? And as we need more cooling here, so we have to pay, so customer has to pay more and power to run those cooling units that will cool these things. While here, these things are generally like they are not used the way they are used here. So less cooling is required. So we also save on the energy side. So that's the main difference. Also, one thing is the transfer time. So if say something goes wrong, say if utility power goes off here, the transfer time will be less because inverter is already regenerated, right? But here that's not the case because it will take time for inverter to energize because power is flowing through the static bypass. Then these are the two types of N+1 UPS configurations. So this goes back to the UPS diagram here. So this is the modular UPS, right? Now, the internal modular redundant is when single UPS will have more modules. So this is just one kind of UPSs, but there are different types. So there will be a UPS that will have more power modules. So this power module supports 50 kilowatt. Here, our load is of 1000 kilowatt. So if we have 250 kilowatt power module, we need 4 power modules, right? Now, what is this fifth doing here? So if something goes wrong with one unit, then this will help to supply the load. So that is the that is called the internal modular redundant configuration. This is helpful because many times if there is maintenance required or if something goes wrong, then we have an extra module that is supporting the unit, that is supporting the load. This is the parallel redundant. So there will be 3 different UPSs. Here there is only one UPS with different power modules, while here it will be 3 different UPSs. So if something goes wrong with one UPS, then the other UPSs will be supplying the load. So there is a difference, right? Why they have created these 2 types, and we will see here. So what is N? So N is the 1000 kilowatt. Whatever the load is, here we are taking 1000 kilowatt. So N is 1000 plus 1, right? So it's called redundancy, that if something goes wrong, then we can always use the extra module or the extra UPS. So this is with no redundancy. There is only 1000 kilowatt power modules, or only UPSs that can support 1000 kilowatt. And these are the other two versions that we sell. So inverter or any other power module failure. So say if inverter goes off, right? So if there is no redundancy, then the UPS will go to the static bypass and no battery backup available. But for the N+1 internal module, the remaining UPS's modules will support the load and battery backup. So say if inverter goes off, right? If there is no redundancy, then the load will be affected. But here, if this inverter goes off, then power will flow through the other UPSs, right? Here also as same. If there is a DC bus failure, so DC bus is this, right? So if there is a failure, here it is a single point of failure. If this on this side, if DC bus goes off, then we have to close this UPS unit, right? And then power will flow through the static bypass. And here, if say one of the DC links goes off, there is a very high, no, not very low possibility that all of these DC links of all the UPSs will go off, right? So if this one goes off, then we still have the UPSs that will supporting the load. So that is the advantage here. And also the UPS maintenance. So if we don't have redundant, then we have to close the UPS completely. We have to shut down the UPS. But here, if the UPS maintenance goes off, then no battery backup available. But here there is a battery backup available, right? Because here, like, we will have the maintenance bypass that will pass the load, pass the power, supply power to the load. Now, there is also the cost difference here. So if we are buying UPS with no redundancy, then we will have, like, there will obviously it will be less cost. If we are doing N+1 internal modular redundancy, it will be little bit more. If we do parallel, definitely it will be more, because we are using 3 to 4 number of UPSs. But it also depends on the scenario, that what kind of redundancy customer is looking for. If they want to save on the money, then they should go with the internal modular. But if they want to go with more redundancy and more reliable power, then they should definitely focus on this, right? Now the advancement in the UPSs. So modularity of the UPS. Nowadays, the whole UPS module, they have different modular components. So there is a power module, there is a battery module. Before, like, there was no such thing. There was a full rack of UPS, and there was a full rack of batteries, and it was very difficult to maintain these units. Now and also the physical size. Nowadays, the UPSs, they are footpoint. Okay, so the UPSs are far more smaller, 25% reduction in the footprint. Then the efficiency. Okay, so why this is important? So if we are using less space for the UPSs, then we can fit more racks with servers. Now this is okay, interesting, but if we look at on the co-location side, so what is co-location? Co-location is, say for example, if you have a data center, so there will be small businesses who don't want to store their data on their premises. So they will ask you to store their servers on in your data center. So that's called the co-location services. Right now, like this co-location industry is also growing a lot. Co-location business is also growing, because many times industries, they don't want to store data on their premises. So if the UPS is using less space, then that the co-location provider can use that space to store servers and can earn extra money. Then comes the efficiency. So energy efficiency has increased, as we talked about the eco mode. Also, there is an advanced eco mode where you can save more energy, but that's not the scope of the webinar here. But there are other topologies as well that are being developed to improve the efficiency. And this means savings of about $5,000 per year per UPS. Now the software. Today we have advanced softwares that are monitoring and helping us to manage the IT equipment that is on site. Before, there used to be like a group of teams who used to be on site on the data center to manage of what is happening there. But nowadays, like I had a chance to visit one of our customers site. They were the colocation provider, and they had this big building, and all the floors they had different data centers, and there were only two people who were managing that whole building. So how is it possible? This is possible with the software. Like they just have to sit, they just have to open their laptop and see all the sensors and everything, if that is working well, and if something is off, or if something is going wrong, they can just reach out, or they can fix the problem by using the software. Like that's how the advancement has occurred. Also the lithium ion battery technology. So UPSs comes with the VRLA batteries, and life cycle of these batteries are 3 to 5 years. But with the lithium ion battery technology, you can save, like these batteries will run for 10 years. And also, like not much maintenance is required on the lithium ion batteries. They are lighter, and also they have less footprint compared to the VRLA batteries. So this decreases the total cost of ownership by 50%. Total cost of ownership is like there are two costs. There is operational cost and capital cost. So capital cost, say for example, if we buy a car, so we have to pay some money when we buy a car. So that's the capital cost. The operational cost is we have to do service, we have to do oil change, and then we have to do battery checks and all the other services to maintain our car through, like say for 5 years or 10 years. So that is called the operational cost. With the lithium ion batteries, there is huge reduction in the operational cost, and that's how a company saves on the total cost of ownership by 50%. Okay. Um, so now next is the cooling in the data center. So cooling is very much essential. Why? Because we have electronic devices that are running, we have servers that are running, so they generate heat. And batteries, they are very sensitive. And the normal temperature that the battery can run on is 25 degrees Celsius. But if we go more, if we go, like if there is more heat that is generated, and if the temperature goes higher, then the life cycle of battery may be affected. So cooling is very, very important. So there are three types of coolings: room based, row based, and rack based. So room based cooling. So here in all these drawings, the blue arrow is the cool air and the red arrow is the hot air. This block, this is the side diagram. So this is basically a rack, right? A rack of servers, or a rack of the power equipment. And this is the plenum. So when they generate heat, so the hot air will flow through here, and then there will be the HVAC system. So HVAC is high ventilation air conditioning, air conditioning system. So there will be refrigerant, it will expand and compress, and then we will have the cool air, and it will go through the whole room. So that's why it is called room based cooling. Right now, the row based cooling. So in data center there are line of rows, so 1 row, 2 row, 3, 4, and there is a line of rows. So how they categorize is this side. So here, like they are generating the hot air, right? And that hot air will go through again. This is a crack unit. So crack is computer air conditioning unit. So this will so the hot air will flow through here, and then again there'll be refrigerant, and again this it will cool the hot air, and then cool air will flow through these racks. This is the rack based cooling. So rack based cooling will have the HVAC system inside it. So there will be refrigerant here, and the hot air will flow through here, it will cool, and then it will cool the IT equipment and the batteries on this side. So this is how it works. There are also two types. So there is air-based cooling and water-based cooling. Mostly nowadays, air-based cooling is used in data center. Also, this also depends on the customer's requirement, right? Like room-based cooling, it is cheap. It is cheaper, but this does not provide better efficiency because we don't know where the hotspots are. While row based cooling is better as compared to this, right? But also this increases cost. And the rack based cooling is also more better because it will focus on the single rack. So there are less chances of having hotspots in the rack-based cooling. But it also depends on also type of data center, if it's a small data center or large data center. Also, what are the customer needs? Okay. Um, Next is the environmental monitoring. So why is it important? So there are three things here. First of all is the physical security. Now these data centers, they need to be protected. If there is a person, if there is some random person who just walks in the data center and if does any harm to any equipment, then customer can incur huge losses, right? So that's why we have cameras, like there are cameras in it, and then a person who is sitting in another country can also look through the cameras of what is happening inside the data center. So that is one kind of threat. Then can you afford downtime? Downtime is the time during which the data center is off. So how much does it cost? It's approx $740,000, the average cost of a data center outage. So you can realize that we if something goes wrong, it's huge loss. 100 million dollars per year organizations lose to the downtime. These are all the reports from the Gartner studies, and there are some consulting industries. They do research on these kind of scenarios and they provide data to us. So that's where this is coming from. So this just explains that it is very, very important that we supply, that data centers should be up and running. And also, for example, say Google data center, right? Say if there is a Google data center and if there is a storm or earthquake and say that that data center collapses, still your data will not be lost because Google also has other data centers. So because they cannot rely on one single data center. If something goes wrong, then we should have other data centers who have the same information. So still, if something goes wrong, we don't have to worry. Our data will be stored in other data centers. Also, the IT resiliency fallacy. So this is human error, right? Even during, say, if the product is being manufactured, we do a lot of testing and check that nothing is wrong and everything, but there is always a chance of human error and we might miss it. During maintenance, during the repairing of these units, something might occur. And due to those accidental or human error, the equipment will be affected. And how we can monitor that? Through the sensors. And this is how this works. So this is the NetBot. So I'm talking about Schneider here. Like we have the NetBot series. Other companies, they have other versions. So this is the NetBot's monitor. This will go on the UPS unit, as we saw in the previous slides. And then these are cameras, these are wireless sensors. So there is a temperature sensor to check if the temperature is fine, humidity sensor, dry contact to check the air. Also, if there is any leakage, if there is any vibration, smoke, and this is beacon, so it is an alert. It will give alerts. And so these are the sensors that will be connected to this unit, and then this will be connected to the network of the data center, and the data center manager can see all these things, that what is happening inside the data center with the NetBots. We also have EcoStruxure. So EcoStruxure, this is EcoStruxure is also, I'm talking about Schneider. Other companies, they have their other versions, but like EcoStruxure is advanced compared to our competitors. So I'll explain what is it and how does it work. So EcoStruxure is an IoT based platform where the sensors will communicate, and it will so first of all it will collect data. So these are the things that are inside the data center, right? So here there will be the NetBot. So they are sensors, they will be collecting all the data. Then it will go through the gateway, and there will be a cloud. We have our EcoStruxure cloud. Now again, it depends on the customer if they want to keep like this on their premise, or they want us to manage their equipment. So that's called connecting. So so the sensors collect the data, they will connect with our EcoStruxure platform, and here everything will be analyzed. Okay, so say if, for example, if temperature is off, if temperature is increasing, what, where is that increasing, in which rack, right? What battery module is affected? So this will see that, and then if a particular battery module is affected, then it will send an alert to the customer that, oh, that in your data center this is affected, and you have to so it will be basically an alert that just see that how you can fix it. We also, like, there is also the customers can upgrade it, where we will also get alerts. So our customer care center will get an alert, and they will monitor the whole data center. So if something goes wrong, they will immediately send technicians on site, and our technicians, they are spread across the globe. So in all areas we have our technicians, so if anything is off, like we can reach there uh, in 8 hours, in 24 hours. So this is also part of the contract that we do with our customers. And then by analyzing, we can take action. So before, this was not the case. This is super new that is coming in right now. And I have also added an example in the upcoming slide that will show that how important and how this helps. Next is edge computing. So I was talking about data centers and how there is a, like, how your data or our data is stored in a different part of the world. Now, what is edge computing? As the word says, edge computing is, say if a data is generated um, in at a particular place. So all the computing equipment, so servers and monitoring and everything, will be closer to where the data is generated. So computing happens closer to the where data is generated, right? Right now we are sitting on our computer, we are sitting in our offices, in our home, working on emails and Google Drives and all sort of things on various applications, websites. But data is not analyzed closer to our homes, right? The data is analyzed in a data center, we don't know where, in different parts of the world. But with edge computing, the small businesses, they will have servers and everything on site. This is a booming field right now. Why? There is an example in the upcoming slide. So there are regional edge. So this is for a particular area. That this, when we have local edge, this is, say for example, like our NUV, right? We do have a server room. Like when I was there, I knew that we had a server room. I think it was on second or third floor. Then industrial edge. So in industries, as I said, that there are sensors who are communicating with each other, and continuously data is generated, and they are making smart decisions. So it is essential that we put these closer to where the data is generated. That's the industrial edge. This is a telco, this is telecommunication. So right now we are having 4G, but you know that 5G is coming, and with 5G there will be towers like at every few distance, right? So again, to support those equipments, we will need UPSs. So that's, and this is the hyper. So there was a data center, and then now it has like divided into these forms. Now this is an example of edge data center. So this is a micro data center. So what happens here is you can see that this is the cooling unit. These are fans. You can put your UPS here. Then there will be power distribution unit. So it's a power bar. So power distribution unit, there are two kinds. So one is the power bar, and the other is the full power distribution rack, which will distribute power across the room or across the building. But here we are referring to the power bar. Then we can put our servers, we can put our external batteries and the UPSs, and also there will be the monitoring piece which will be connected in this whole unit. So this is also new that has came up. So what customers have to do, they just have to order like a micro data center, and we can ship the whole unit on their site. Then we also have like right now we have prefabricated data centers. I have not added here, but it's like I think that it's nice to share. So what is prefabricated data center is, they will put the whole data center in the shipping cabinet. So if you say drive on highways, and if you see there are huge shipping cabinets on the truck. So basically we will use those shipping shipping cabinets, and we'll turn that into data center. So how this is used, say for example, if there is a co-location facility, they are supporting 10 customers, right? And they have the infrastructure or the building that can support only computing for the 10 customers. Now if they are increasing their business and they want more space, right? So what they can do is we can ship this whole shipping container with the data center inside, and they can put that in their parking lot, and our customers are using this as the business is growing. Then comes the edge computing applications. So as I said, that edge computing is very, very important. How? So these are some of the applications. I'm sorry, these images are not clear, but I'll explain them. So this is the smart retail. So I think most of you have watched the video of Amazon Go Store. So you don't have to stand in lines. There are no cashiers. You can just pick up whatever you want from the store, and you can just walk out of it. And the payment will be done through your account. So that is super cool, right? So if we have this environment, like in the smart retail, we need that, like there is huge amounts, there are so many data that is being generated, right? What products are we buying, what brand it is, what is the cost, and everything. So it is very essential that we use edge computing here. Why? Because one of the problem is latency. So say for example, if we are using Gmail, if I'm using Gmail and Google Drive a lot, because that's the example that mostly people use, but there are other websites and applications as well. So if we are using that, there is some kind of delay. We can bear that delay, right? But here that's not possible, like because we want to, like the app should capture that what things are we buying, what is the price of it, what is the brand of it, and what will be the payment. So it is quick, so we cannot bear the latency. That's the reason. Then comes the smart city. Smart city is a city that will, this is not has happened, like this is still on the roadmap. Like a city has a metro system, right? Then like when we talk about some metro cities, there is a huge traffic problem right now. And also you know that Elon Musk is also working on to solve this traffic problem, so it's a huge issue nowadays. Then we have the power plant, like the grid, the utility power that is coming in. Then there is a parking system, then water treatment. So all these various things that are required, that in the city, right? They will share their data, and then smart decisions will be made so that people can have a better and comfortable living. So that's what smart city. So here also we need that like data is processed closer to where the data is generated. This is the digital health. Digital health is, and it is very, very important nowadays due to the corona and all. So digital health will there will be softwares, there will be sensors along with the medical equipment, and then they will collect data. So doctor can go through the reports and go through what is happening with the patient's life, um, like on a larger scale. Then comes the smart grid. So smart grid is, it will decide that what kind of industry or what kind of building or what area is generating more, is needing more load, where the load is, right? And then there will be different sources from where the power is generated, and it will decide on the basis of where the power should go. And this will be automatic, right? As the data is generated on how much load is required, during what time the load is required, and from where we can get power, right? Like solar energy, we can use it in summer, but during rainy season, during winters, that might not be the case. So it will make smart decisions. Then we have autonomous cars. I was at one of the seminars, and one of the GM employee was there, and she mentioned that General Motors have promised that in coming years they are generating, they are developing a technology that will be in the cars that will have zero accidents and zero congestion. This is a huge promise, right? And even like I have seen that in Canada, based on the environment and based on the other situations, are like cars are more advanced as terms to India. Like the technology is still coming in India. So this is autonomous cars is like, you don't have to worry. We do have Tesla right now, and the version 3 is almost autonomous, but still they are super expensive. So there is a future where we all can afford the autonomous cars. And you know that, say for example, if we are on highway and there is a car about a car in front of us, and if car is changing directions, if changing lanes, or if increasing or decreasing the speed, then we cannot wait that data to come to our car if the data center is somewhere in the other country. So the computing will be inside the car. So this is also an example of edge computing. Then comes the smart factory. So smart factory, as I also mentioned before, like all the robotic arms and all the analytics, everything will be connected. The whole supply chain will be connected. So it will also say that, okay, we have demand of certain kind of products, so to focus on those kind of products. During a particular season, we have demand of particular products. So everything will be, so the data will be gathered and it will be analyzed. So I think I have crossed the time limit. So, but there are only 2 slides left. So this is an example that I wanted to share. One of our customer had a data center, like different data centers in different countries, and he was in US. One of our salesperson was sitting with him and talking about the future advancements of his business. Suddenly he receives an alert in his email saying that there is a data center in a country, in some other country, and something is wrong there. So he opened his email, and there was a link. So when he opened the email and the link, he got access to the audio video interface to the data center that was in that country. Through his laptop, he was able to communicate with the data center specialist who was super new and super young. So he just joined the company like few weeks ago. So he was so tensed and he was just running around, and he did not know what is happening. But the person, the customer who was sitting with a salesperson, he was super experienced. So he also was able to see through the other notifications through the email that there is a temperature sensor. There is something wrong with the batteries, and the temperature sensor is indicating it because the breaker has failed. So he was able to see the person who was in the data center, and he started talking to him. He showed him where the problem is, because the software showed him that which rack, like when I say data center, there are so many racks in so many rows, but this sensor detected that particularly in this row, in this rack, and this is the battery that is indicating that is facing the problem. So he was able to guide him, and the problem was solved in like 10 to 15 minutes. So this is how crucial it is important, right? Say for example, if you are managing the data center and it's Diwali, you are sitting with your family, enjoying your time, enjoying your vacation, and if something goes wrong with the data center, what happens? What do you want, right? You don't want to go there. If your boss calls, you don't want to go there and look what is going on. You want to spend time with your family. And with this software, with these monitoring technologies, like you can do that. So these are some of the career options. This is the last slide. So these are some of the career options that you can have. So there are 2 things when you come out of your bachelor's degree. Either you can go, if you want to do a job, there are 2 things. So either you can select a super technical role, or you can select a commercial role. Okay, so there are 3 things. And the third is, if you can select a role that is combination of both technical and commercial. Mostly talking about like students, mostly students from India who do engineering, they mostly select the third option. It's combination of technical and commercial. So these are some of the options that you can start. So this first is tech support. You can, this is like mostly any company will have their tech support, right? Because um, what does tech support do is they help sales team about what if they have any queries about the technology or about the products or services. So they will help them to answer questions and to give better customer satisfaction. So this is what will help the sales team. So that's tech support. Then you can go to contractor sales. So how the data center industry works is, say for example, so not yeah, so example is Schneider is creating these UPSs and all the power equipment, maintenance, bypass transformers and everything. Schneider will sell directly to end user, but again there will be channels. So they will they will sell through electric contractors, they will sell through channels, through resellers and all distributors. So you can be the contractor sales as well. In some of the countries, they will ask for a certain amount of experience. If you have experience in tech support or inside sales, you can get into this role. And when I say sales, like if you want to earn good amount of money, you should go in sales um, because they have huge bonus. So this is contractor sales. You'll be working with the electrical contractors, and this will be super technical. And also you will be selling things and selling services and products. Then comes the channel sales. So channel sales is when you're working with the reseller. So this is the single phase products, because there is also the retail side of the edge computing and the transactional side. So that's where the channel sales come in. Then you can also be a test engineer. You can start with a junior test engineer. It also depends on companies. Like some of them may ask for experience, but if there is a small company, if you can start, you can start with this role. Then there is end user sales. This is pure commercial. Um, what end user sales do is they have limited amount of knowledge for the data center. They will just grab the opportunities. They will just work with the accounts and see that, okay, there is a need for data center, or there is a need for this service. And then they will work with either tech support or the solutions architect to give solution to the customers. Then we have marketing communications. This is a pure commercial role. This will in this role, a person has to see that how he or she can promote our products or whatever is going on with the company or the technology through various social media platforms and websites. Also managing the webinars is part of this role, and any customer events. Like if you go into this, there are so many trade shows that are happening, and there are other customer events, reseller events. So marketing communication specialists can handle that. Then comes the business development. This is also a cool opportunity where you get to talk to customers, develop relationship with them, but you should also have a knowledge of the products, of the technical side. How does the data center work, and like the basics of it. Then we have data center specialist. This is someone who will manage the data centers. And then we have solution architect, who will actually build the full data center. Say for example, if an airport is coming to us and we want to build a data center, right? So the solution architect will build the SL signal line diagrams and see what is required, what products goes in, and then it will provide the full solution to the airport. Then we have field service representatives. So these are the people who will go on site and who will perform the maintenance services or any kind of services, right? There is maintenance service, and then if something goes wrong, then that kind of, like we need field service representative on site, so to fix any kind of problem on site. So these are some of the options. There might be other options as well, but I found these interesting, so I thought of sharing with you. Okay, so now questions.
Thank you very much, all of you, to all participants, and to Shivani ma'am, Prakriti ma'am, and Shweta ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Navratna.